Most trainees have unrealistic ideas what it means to be a research team leader. I wish I had known when I started in this career that the job changes over time. In a way, it would have made it so much more exciting for me. And there is some importance to doing the right prep work before you switch careers as well. So today I wanted to take the time to actually talk a little bit about how the job of us changes, like how what we do, the activities that we do in academia change when we move through the different stages from graduate student to postdoc to faculty. And this might apply more to the life sciences than to other disciplines in academia. I would actually be very interested in hearing your feedback when you're part of if you're part of a different discipline. So let's switch over screens here. I'm going to share my screen and pull up a little graphic that I made so that we can look at the different activities that we do as academics. And so there are two, or actually three different categories, if you so will. There's a category of, well, that just is always your job, no matter what stage you are in your career. Then there is a category of, oh, you're doing this very little when you're starting out as a graduate student, and then it becomes more as you move into a position, like a faculty position or position as a research team leader. And then there are the activities that you do a lot of at the beginning of your career, and then they become less as you move into a faculty position. And I said that before, but I'm going to do it again. To try to do two jobs as one person is crazy. If you want a life that feels fulfilled, where you have time to do other things, to pay attention to other areas of life that might be important to you. For example, your family. There might be hobbies, there might be friends that you want to spend time with. There might be other things that you are interested in doing, and that is perfectly fine. You are not a not dedicated scientist if you have other interests. It's actually important for our creativity and for our innovative thinking to do some other things. So for that, we have to create time. And to create time, it is important that you do not do two jobs as one human being. How do you do that? Well, you transition, right? You do the job that you are here to do at this stage of your career, and you set aside a little bit of time to prepare for your next career stage. But you don't do all the jobs that you've done as a graduate student, as a postdoc. You don't do all the jobs that you've done as a postdoc, as a research team leader, or as a faculty member, okay? So let's look at the different activities and you know, what your job is in those respective career stages. So to find your personal vision and purpose and align this with your career strategy is key at every stage of your career. So if you haven't really thought about it and done that yet, then it's about time. It does not matter where you are. You always have to know where you are right now, what is driving you, what your purpose is, why you're in this for, why you're spending so much effort and so much time doing science, doing, I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing in academia. You have to know that why. If you don't know your why, it's very hard to be motivated over long periods of time. If you have a hard time being motivated over long stretches of time, it's very hard to be successful and highly productive over long stretches of time. So figure out what's driving you, what your purpose is, where you want to go, what your vision is. And your vision is not to become a postdoc if you're a graduate student. Your vision is not to become a tenure track faculty member when you're a graduate student or a postdoc. Your vision is, well, what do you need that for? The position is just the train you're on. It's just a vehicle that gets you to your purpose, to your vision, right? So what is it that you want to do with that? Like for me, it is empowering scientists. I love being a research team leader because it puts me in a position where I have a lot of leverage. I get to work with a great team. I got to build that great team, and I'm still building it. And I get to empower my team members. I really feel very strongly about it. As a faculty member, I also get to work with my colleagues, and I get to work with students, graduate students, and I get to empower them. So I get to do a lot of empowering all week long. I love that. So that's what my mission is, my purpose. What is my vision? I want to see a culture in academia where we are all empowering to each other, where we get away from this overwhelm, running in the rat race, doing 2 or 3 jobs, being one person all the time, to a place where we support each other, where we drive innovation, where we are creative and bring in this creativity to create value for our communities, for our academic community, for our scientific research community, and for society. That is my vision. All right, so number 2, what your job is at every stage in your career, no matter whether you're a graduate student, postdoc, or faculty, is to develop and execute a career strategy. So once you know where you're going, you need to develop a plan of how to get there. You need to know what the success metrics are, and as we discussed before, do not confuse the success metrics with strategy, right, or with purpose. The metrics are just the metrics. They are easy to measure. Number of publications, dollars of grant funding, or whatever the currency is that is relevant to you. That is why they are metrics, but they are not the purpose. And when you confuse those, life sucks. I know that from my own personal experience. So what is not your job as a graduate student yet? So let's start with this category of activities that progressively increase as you move through this academic career. So to develop a team strategy is most definitely your job as a faculty member. As a postdoc, you want to start learning how to do that. How do you learn how to do stuff like this? So for these kind of things, there is actually no official university training available as far as I know. I mean, there are some things that help us learn how to manage labs, for example. But honestly, as a faculty member, managing your lab is also not really your job, okay? You're supposed to be the team leader, not the team manager. We will cover that on a different video. It's a whole big topic in and of itself. So you need a team strategy though, and you need to acquire the skills of developing and executing team strategies. To develop a team vision, mission, and purpose is also your job as a team leader. Now, again, you want to get acquainted with these terms and how to do that while you're a postdoc, right? How are you supposed to know how to do that when you're at the next career stage if you haven't actually spent some time on developing those skills? And developing a vision and a mission for a team is not the same as doing that for yourself. What that takes is that the entire team is buying into it. So there's a little bit of different kind of work and skill required. Writing grants and fellowship applications is a big topic, right? Academic writing, absolutely, man. Start this as early as possible. But to do the application writing, right, you do very little of this as a graduate student. You do definitely do more as a postdoctoral fellow, and that's one of your main jobs as a faculty member. So to have a plan in place of how you will acquire the skills to craft convincing grant proposals does take a little bit of thinking, and it most likely will take outside help beyond just asking colleagues for a little bit of feedback. If you think about how you learned writing in school, think about how long that took you, from learning letters to actually writing good essays or good pieces of analysis. I mean, it took me like 13 years, right, of school to get to a decent level. Now, let me tell you one thing, grant writing is a completely different game. In fact, academic writing is a completely different beast. The rules of the game are different, but there's a lot of hearsay out there about how that should be. And a lot of that stuff results in extremely sucky academic writing. So start building that skill, find resources that are of high quality, that are modern, that are not antiquated and you know, like, quite frankly, not very effective nowadays. Mentoring. Mentoring is also something that is going to be important throughout your career, but you do very little as a graduate student, more so as a postdoc, because you really have to learn the art of communicating, giving feedback in a way that is motivating, not discouraging, but being crisp so that you're actually getting the results that you want, right? This skill of communication is also not very developed for most of us. It's also something that we don't focus on and don't have courses on in academia really throughout our career, but that can make or break your research team. Talks and conferences. And then there's networking down here. And then there is writing publications. All these things are in the same category of gradient, right? You start out with little as a graduate student, you do more as a postdoc, this is your job as a faculty member. Talks, so speaking, goes in the same category. If you cannot express yourself clearly to your colleagues and to the public, then you have work to do, right? I mean, for me, like, for the longest time, I wish I had actually somebody take me aside as a graduate student and tell me that my public speaking sucks. That would have been very helpful. Maybe I would have done something about it earlier. I didn't even know that that was a skill that you can develop. I mean, that sounds so funny now. Nowadays, I hold the opinion that we can learn any skill. Back then, I thought, well, there are good academic speakers, there are good public speakers, and then there's me, and that's just what people have to suffer through. Me and others have to suffer through. This is not so. This is a skill that can be built. But again, as with any skill, it takes effort, it takes time. Now, if you can start that as a graduate student, that is great. You need good feedback. You should be in charge of your feedback. That's also a whole different training. So I'm not going to talk about this in this particular video here, but also know that just as with writing, the feedback that you're getting on an average basis might be based on people's faulty beliefs of what works and what doesn't work. So always ask yourself, like, how solid is this piece of advice? How true is this piece of advice? And always look at it, at writing and at speaking from this perspective. Everything that is effective and that is within the value system that we hold as academic community is okay. A personal style is okay. It's actually more effective than a very impersonal, passive style. All right, talks and conferences are important also for networking, right? You have to meet people. You might not want to hear that, but the merit of your work is important, but to have connections, to know people is just as important, because let me tell you one secret. Academics are also human people. Human people, that was stupid. Anyways, academics are also humans. And they respond to what most people respond to, namely connection. Knowing somebody is getting somebody through the door for an interview much more likely than not knowing somebody, just looking at their stuff on paper, right? That's just human nature, that if we know somebody, or we know somebody's face, or we know the lab that he or she is coming from, we have more of a connection to them. And we are more likely to trust them and want to interact with them. So network, also very important. Teaching is an interesting one, I think. So as a graduate student, you might have the opportunity. I would say as a graduate student, it depends. Like, it's an opportunity for you to figure out whether that's a career road that you want to pursue. For postdoc, same thing. It's an opportunity for you to figure out whether you want to pursue this as a career path stronger or not. Now, as a faculty member, in almost all faculty kind of arrangements, positions, teaching is going to be part of it. And it's more heavily weighted for some positions than for others. So this is where this whole testing period during your training comes in handy, because you have to actually know what you sign up for. I mean, I would say you want to know that. So when I was a graduate student, I did just a tiny little bit of teaching, but I was so insecure back then, it was very uncomfortable to me. As a postdoc, I did a little bit more teaching. I still sucked at it, never mind. But what I found out is that there are certain aspects to teaching that I don't enjoy very much. Like, for example, having to show up every afternoon on Tuesday and Thursday to do the teaching. Don't enjoy that very much. I like my freedom of going to conferences when they come up. I like my freedom of having a fairly open schedule that I decide what to do with. So when I applied for faculty positions, I made sure I didn't go for those positions that were teaching heavy. So set yourself up to know what you like and what you don't like, and put yourself into an environment that is suited to your needs and to whatever your preferences are and what you feel strongly about. That is completely legitimate. Okay, so then as a faculty member, as I said, most likely teaching is going to be part of your responsibilities. And it kind of depends on your appointment, how heavily weighted it is. Now, I will say one thing, a lot of people really overdo the prep part of the teaching, and that is not to say that you shouldn't do a good job, but oftentimes, you know, like what you want to go for is spend, like, what's this rule again? Like, I forgot. Like, we usually achieve 80% of the impact in 20% of the time, and then we spend 80% of the time to make another 20% of the difference. That's not a very good strategy for productivity. So when you prepare for teaching, make sure, you know, you're finding the sweet spot there where you deliver high quality, engaging, motivating, impactful teaching, but you don't sink, like, I don't know, an unreasonable amount of time into prep work because you feel inadequate, or like you feel like you have to prove something. Do this internal work where you don't feel like you have to prove yourself to your students first, then you won't feel the need of over preparing for teaching. All right, now let's go to the things, to the aspects of the academic job where the gradient goes the other way around. You do it a lot during what we call training period, so our apprenticeship period, as a graduate student and postdoc, and then you really should switch gears when you start your faculty position and make that your team's job, not your job, so that you can do an excellent job doing your leadership activities and tasks. And those are collecting and analyzing data. Obviously, right, when we start out as graduate students, that's the main aspect of the work. But then, you know, as you move into your faculty position, that really shouldn't be your job anymore. Now, there's one, I think, exception to that, and that is if you really enjoy collecting and analyzing data, if that's like your deep passion and joy, then I'm not going to take this from you, okay? But know that you have to tone it down and cut it back, because you now have a whole other job. If you're a graduate student in the postdoc right now and you're like, well, that sounds horrible, this is my love to do, to collect data, to do bench work, to do the sciencey part of science, maybe, I don't know, and all these other jobs that I talked about earlier that get heavier when you take over a research team or a faculty position, when you move up the ranks in academia, then you want to find yourself a different arrangement. Like, I would love for somebody to work in my lab who wants to just do the science and who does an excellent job at that. And I would do a lot of work and grant writing in order to enable that. And against, I guess, the collective wisdom out there of those positions going away, I would wager that if somebody is really embracing that and really going after this with motivation and passion, there will be a team leader out there who is going to go after funding for you to create a position for you with just as much motivation and passion. All right. Accumulating general and field-specific knowledge. Well, you have to do that a lot when you're starting out, just because you don't have that yet. You have to do that less when you move up through this career ladder, just because you've built a foundation. I mean, there's still some of that, right? And, you know, maybe I should have done like another cross here, another plus here in brackets, because again, like, some of us really enjoy this kind of work and there's no reason to not do it, but you have to make sure that you balance that with what your responsibilities as leaders are. And because I like to be honest and straightforward, that's kind of my trademark. If you don't want to do the jobs that are your job as team leader, namely leading your team, working with people, empowering people, bringing in funding, then maybe that's not the career for you. All right, and then literature review, same thing. You do that to a degree as a graduate student, to a higher degree. As a postdoc, that's probably one of your main jobs, especially as you go, as you get to the end of this part of your career stage. And the reason is that this is the time when you're starting to think about your independent research program. Even if you're choosing a different career path, right? You want to understand what that career path is about. So, but if you're staying in the academic, like kind of ladder or within this academic career path, then definitely now is the time to really understand what the big questions in your field are. What are these gaps of knowledge? And don't think small. You don't want to just think about the next step. That's kind of what you do as a graduate student. You learn how to think about the next step, like the next experiment. Once you really are independent in figuring out what the next experiment is, given the data that you have collected, you're probably ready to move on into a postdoc. But in a postdoc, you start thinking bigger. You're looking at your data in the context of all the data that are out there in your field, and you want to be able to clearly articulate how what you're doing fits into the bigger picture. You also want to be able to clearly articulate where the gaps are and where you're fitting in here. Like, what is your research program going to fill? What need, what gap? All right, so as a research team leader, because you have all these other jobs, like I, for example, heavily rely on my team. They are, especially my postdocs, research scientists. That's really their job. And I occasionally read like a high impact publication or something that is important to us for technical reasons, or when we're writing publications together, I read up on the status of the field. But largely I leave this to my team, and then we have discussions and they point me to papers that are important. I don't read every single paper anymore that comes out on a certain topic. All right, so this was this overview here today of the different activities that are relevant to you at different stages of the career. I hope this was helpful. If it was, there will be more trainings like this. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and also join our Facebook group, Team Leadership in Research, where we support each other and work toward bringing a shift about in the academic culture so that we all can lift each other up, be empowered, and have happy and fulfilled careers and lives. See you the next time. Bye.